Alliances tend to make global business go around, and they also make global business schools go around. We are going to be talking in just a minute with two deans, Tom Robertson, who's the dean of the Wharton School in Philadelphia, and our own Frank Brown, dean of INSEAD. Thank you for being here, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
How has Wharton modified its approach to business education given the current economic situation?
Well, I think it began to be modified almost in every class. Starting last autumn. I think especially if you were a professor of finance or professor of business ethics, you couldn't walk into a class and pull out last year's lecture notes and continue along. So I think courses last year were indeed different. But in addition, we were doing teach-ins, actually, I think, let's see, starting in October, we were doing teach-ins where we would bring our students together and we would have our faculty talking about the causes of the crises and what some of the ramifications might be and what might happen next. We have a blue ribbon committee working on our curriculum, looking at the total MBA experience and how it should change. In terms of, let's say, bringing in more in the way of government business relations or more in corporate governance or ethics or risk management or whatever the faculty committee decides to do. So we've been hard at work really ever since Lehman, as we like to say.
Frank, what kinds of programs then has INSEAD been doing? I know that public-private partnerships are something that the school's been looking into more.
Well, we're very focused, and Tom talked about looking at public policy and more impact of public policy. We're very focused on that, particularly for the MBA program. And our MBA committee is planning some partnerships where we might look to offer potentially joint degrees, MBA and MPA. We'd also like to get more people into the academic ranks specializing in government relations and government administration, et cetera.
What are students beginning to tell you about their priorities as business school graduates? I would imagine that can't imagine a lot of people wanting to be investment bankers right now, or am I right, or maybe I'm wrong?
No, many of them still want to be investment bankers, but fewer than last year, obviously. There's been a reality check. I think many students are looking more broadly. They may be looking beyond finance, but there are many financial institutions in addition to investment banks. So they may be looking at hedge funds or private equity, or they're looking at boutique investment banks or various startup financial institutions of one kind or another. I think what this has done is caused people to reevaluate what their objectives are, and they may stay in finance or they're looking more broadly.
Frank, do you see that, or do you see the European roots that INSEAD has coming to the fore a little bit more?
The thing I would say is the financial services industry is not dead, full stop.
I agree.
And I think that there are fundamental changes taking place which actually will excite some of our MBAs and create opportunities. And not just in private equity, but also on the regulatory side. But we're also seeing, in terms of trends, we're seeing a big pickup in recruiting in some of the consulting firms, not the traditional ones, but they're still here, but in some of the other ones, like the Big Four, for example. And we're seeing increases in pharmaceutical industry, social services, consultancies, broader healthcare than just the pharmaceuticals. So I think this has actually opened up a much bigger platform for MBAs. However, the total number of jobs available is certainly diminished.
But it's a challenge to create classes to actually suit the kind of the brave new world out there. That's going to be interesting.
We have a big area of entrepreneurial study, and people can focus there if they want. We have private equity and certain financial engineering kinds of programs that people can follow if they want. But it's a general management program, and I think that leaves a lot open.
Sounds very similar to Wharton, where finance may be the #1 major, but I think #2 is really entrepreneurship.
Sure. Yeah.
And you see students moving in all kinds of new directions, which I think is good.
What do you two get out of, for your schools? What do you get out of each other?
Well, I think we get a lot, starting with the students. how many are exchanged each year? About 90
yeah,
or
something like
90
that.
or so. There's faculty exchange, there's joint faculty research, which is going on. We have looked at extending the ability for Wharton to use INSEAD cases and for INSEAD to use simulations coming out of Wharton. And I think there's further potential at the PhD level, and there's certainly potential at the exec ed level, and I'm not sure we figured that one out as well as we should.
Yeah, exec ed has always been the toughest nut to crack because of the natural competitive element between the institutions, but there are some success stories. The PhD is another great example. I know we had 5 Wharton PhDs here last term, and it was great to have them. We've had a couple from INSEAD at Wharton throughout the course of the year as well.
Is technology assisting you in doing this?
There's the sharing of technology for the classroom, simulations and other vehicles.
Yeah, the Prices and Markets course on both campuses was joint, and it was a simulation that was shared between the INSEAD faculty member and the Wharton faculty member. It worked, and it was great. It was very well received.
Women.
Women, 40% this year. We're very happy with that.
Why is it so high?
Congratulations. We're at 32, and I was really happy. We were 17 when I started. We're at 32
That's
today.
really good.
But 40 is phenomenal.
Well, 40 is 40 is good. We wish it were 50 or 60 or 70, but I think women in some ways have different career objectives, or I think it's because our MBAs at admissions have been so old, 28 years old, and the average 28-year-old woman is less interested in 2 years in an MBA program. So we've been working hard on it, and our women are a little bit younger than our men, so that helps.
Do you find that here as well, or is it just a mishmash?
I don't think there's a big difference in the average age, and our average age is 29. We do actually find a much higher proportion of the participants from the US and Canada are women, close to 50%. And that, if you look at any one year, that's about 15% of our roughly 1,000 MBAs. So that's a good number. We see very good percentages in most parts of Asia, and it's very, very slow to pick up in Europe.
What do you think it's going to be like in the Middle East when you start those programs? That's going to be quite interesting.
Actually, very good. There's a big focus on the education of women in the Middle East, and there's a big commitment, particularly in the Emirates, to education of women. Sheikh Mohammed in Abu Dhabi has made that a very, very big focus.
What's it like running a business school in this kind of economic environment? I know people tend to go to school when they can't find a job, but you guys still have to make money as well. How hard is it?
It's lots of fun. No, for Frank and myself or any other dean, you have to balance budget. Now, INSEAD is independent, so you have particular
We're flying
difficulties.
without a net.
You're flying without a net. But at the university level, a business school just can't lose money. You know, it's okay maybe for arts and sciences to lose money or nursing, but if Wharton at the University of Pennsylvania were to lose money, that would be most embarrassing. You have to look at your portfolio of where the revenue comes from. For us, 50% of it is coming from tuition. 20% is executive education, 20% is fundraising, and another 10% is research grants or various other things. So as you go into a very difficult period such as this, you have to be very careful you hit all your admissions numbers. You don't want that 50% to be in any danger whatsoever. Executive education is going to be soft, there's no doubt about it. So you have to manage that one very carefully and go after new clients and manage your way around it. And fundraising is a little bit soft as well. So this year we've admitted a few more MBAs than we normally would, and that's to some extent for budget reasons and because we had a lot more applications. And in our executive MBA program, they're basically about the same as last year, although we might be up ever so slightly.
Yeah, ditto for us on the MBAs. We are looking to balance the program more between Fontainebleau and Singapore. So we actually added a section in Singapore based on demand and because that was one of our objectives to increase the intake there. I would say we're a little bit different because we're much, much less reliant on fundraising, because we can't. I'd like to change that over time, and much more reliant on executive education. So we were close to 50% of our revenue from executive education. It's now down to closer to 40%. And really what that means is you're just being very, very careful about what you're spending, very careful about managing the infrastructure. And it's certainly a crisis, but it's not a disaster.
Where do you think the future growth for business education lies? I mean, both geographically and in terms of subject matter.
For me, I think in the executive sector, I would like to see more of a commitment to organized continuing education. I think there's a bit of a disconnect between granting an MBA and then someone holding that degree for life and potentially never doing another course of study. So I see that as a necessity, and as well I see it as an opportunity for business schools into the future.
You agree with that?
It's such a logical idea, and as we've tried that, especially with our own alumni who always say, oh, you know, we'd like more lifelong learning. Yeah. And we offer programs, but they don't come back. So they say they want, and then they don't necessarily show up. I think for us, lifelong learning is much more the knowledge at Wharton, which is reaching out and translating research and hoping to keep our alumni up to date. I wish we could figure out how to bring in people who have the MBA, and much like in medicine or in law, there should be continuing education. But so far, we haven't figured that one out, Frank.
Yeah, no, I hear you. But I do think there's potential, and I think if we take the current crisis and say, well, you can't blame it on the business school because somebody went there 30 years ago and never darkened the door again. You think about all the impacts on their life since. So you can either say, that's good, don't blame us, or you can say, what should we be doing to make sure that somebody's credential is maintained? And that's really the place that I'm taking it from.
You sound optimistic, despite it all.
I'm always optimistic.
And of course, that's true in certain parts of business, such as the accounting field.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where I come from.
That's right. Right.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
That's
for
a
being
pleasure.
with us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Partner?
Good to see you.